friends, and welcome to the latest issue of Wiser. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel below, and also if you have any comments, leave a comment in the comment section either here on YouTube or on the newsletter website, wherever you see the comment button. And of course, always please click the little heart button, because that lets us know that you like what you've read and what you've heard and what you've seen. So this week, I'm going to start with the news from the European Union, because on Wednesday of this week, the EU published their proposals for regulating artificial intelligence across all areas of our European lives. Trust is a must, not a nice to have, was the Commissioner's digital chief, Margrethe Vestager's kind of leading quote when unveiling the new proposals. She said the new rules would ban AI systems that are considered a clear threat to the safety, livelihoods and rights of people. Now, the reason I'm leading with this particular subject this week is because these are very far-reaching proposals. If implemented, they would go further than any other major economy when it comes to controlling the use and application of AI, of artificial intelligence. In doing so, the EU would be taking the lead in establishing a very strong ethical and regulatory stance against bad behaviour in many artificial intelligence use cases. The EU would also set itself apart from the United States and China. Now, the proposals were leaked about a week ago, which gave plenty of time for commentary and opinion to be put out there in social media before they came live. And luckily for me, I know a chap called Charles Radcliffe, who is an expert in this field. And he's written a piece on Forbes, and he's also made a great YouTube video, and the links are in the commentary for this video and on the newsletter. Now, I had a Zoom call with Charles just a couple of days ago so that he could explain the implications to me. And basically they come down to these bullet points. Contentious uses of AI, such as mass and indiscriminate surveillance, will be banned. This could have huge ramifications for online platforms that rely on automated data aggregation. Number 2, it proposes strict laws on the use of biometrics, such as facial recognition used by law enforcement. Third, a ban on systems that create social credit scores. Now, these are systems that judge someone's trustworthiness based on their social behaviour or predicted personality traits. This is now commonplace, by the way, in China, and will put the European Union on a completely different trajectory to China. And by the way, if you haven't watched Coded Bias on Netflix, you should. Fourth, clear labelling to tell you, the consumer, that you are interacting with an AI system and not a human, or that the video you are watching is a deepfake. Now, this in particular, the second one, is going to be a massive headache for social media, and particularly platforms like Facebook, because they are going to have to take responsibility for making sure that manipulated content is properly identified. And if they don't, the punishments will be significant too, with the ability to issue fines of up to 6% of global revenues. Now, just to put that into context, for Google, that would be about $10 billion. And for Facebook, that would be about $5 billion. So sizable fines are in the offing. And finally, the European Union are proposing an oversight and governance unit that will be created to ensure compliance, especially in the areas of high-risk AI systems such as self-driving cars. Now, these proposals are a long way from becoming law. It's likely to be several years before they do, and much can happen in the meantime. The key point is that the EU is signalling its clear direction of travel. It's sending a very clear message to tech, and it's not going to be a universally acceptable one.
Facial recognition, perhaps one of the biggest technological advances in recent years. But what happens when technology like this falls into the wrong hands? Along with many other technologies like high-performance computers, drones and specialist software, facial recognition will soon fall into a category known as dual-use goods. That means while they all have legitimate civil uses, they could also be abused by military, repressive regimes or even terrorists. The export of European dual-use goods outside the EU is strictly controlled, and Parliament is voting on rules for the 21st century. The new rules will add cyber surveillance technologies like facial recognition to the dual-use list. MEPs successfully pushed for the rules to include human rights violations as a justification for refusing export licenses. Along with more traditional dual-use items like chemical precursors for making explosives or lasers, the updated legislation means the EU has some of the safest dual-use controls in the world.
For Crypto Corner, shopping with Bitcoin is getting easier. One of the biggest obstacles to using Bitcoin as a unit of currency is that you have no idea how much a Bitcoin will be worth tomorrow or next week or next month. 3 years ago, a Bitcoin was trading at around $30,000. Now it's bumping up to $60,000, having peaked at around $64K. Now that means you could buy 2 Model 3 Teslas now for the price of just one in January. That's crazy. Now the issue isn't that Bitcoin is losing purchasing power. It's the opposite. It's appreciating in value. The biggest reason to not spend your Bitcoin is that the value of each one has trended up in the last 11 years since its creation. And hindsight is a wonderful thing. Now, if you compare that to the deflation of the US dollar, if you had a $100 bill in 1913, it would have only been worth $3.87 in 2019. However, that hasn't stopped the rush to add Bitcoin as a method of payment for many retailers. This week, AXA announced they are accepting Bitcoins as payment for insurance premiums in Switzerland. Time magazine are doing the same for magazine subscriptions. And WeWork have jumped in on this too. Interestingly, these firms are willing to take Bitcoin as payments and then hodl them, not exchange it back into fiat, which signals that they believe the only way is up for the price of Bitcoin. One of the most significant moves this week came from PayPal-owned Venmo. They have announced that the payment app, which has a much younger demographic than PayPal, will allow users to buy and hold crypto in the Venmo app. It will also enable them to send crypto to each other within the app and the wallet. Now, this is a big deal because it is the younger generations that have embraced a cashless society. They use apps more freely when it comes to splitting bar bills or sharing costs or expenses. Which leads us on to the opinion piece for this week, which is around the digitization of society. Now, if you want to see the digitization of society unfolding before your very eyes, turn to China. Whilst the West has been largely ignored what's going on in the East, it's in just a handful of years, China has rolled out 5G, digital currencies, biometric payments, social scoring, and blockchain trading systems. In the same time that the EU has been writing a set of rules to curb the use of advanced technologies, China has been getting on with implementing it. This puts two of the world's largest economies, that's the European Union and China, at odds with each other. On the one hand, the EU proposals curb bad behaviour by tech companies to protect individuals' rights and freedoms. On the other hand, China is marching ahead with the digitisation of society. The final frontier is digital cash in a cashless society. The implementation of China's central bank digital currency will be significant, and I am going to be covering CBDCs in detail in the coming weeks. In simple terms, a digital currency backed by a central bank will enable economic activity and financial inclusion that is simply unachievable with fiat currency. Now, this is big news, and it's no coincidence that this week the Bank of England announced it was setting up a task force to look into its own CBDC. Just so you know, there are currently 4, maybe 5 central bank digital currencies globally in the offing. China with the DCEP, in the Caribbean with Dcash, in the Bahamas, which was the very first one, with Sand Dollars, and Sweden with eCorona. There's more to come on this, so watch this space. Thanks very much for listening to this week's issue of Wiser, and remember, insight and information gives you leverage.